Dansby Swanson's better half and an Olympic gold medal champion and a World Cup champion, Mal Pugh Swanson. What's your advice to the young kids today, especially the females?
Never lose the fun in it, and if you do,
you just won Olympic gold. You scored the winning goal in the final game.
Growing up and playing soccer, you always dream of those big moments.
At what age did you start thinking, I may have to decide between college and the national team?
So I was a senior in high school when I got my first senior national team call up. Oh, maybe I don't need to go to college.
We talk a lot on here about anxiety for our kids today. What would be your advice to them?
Once you start questioning yourself, that's when all those anxious thoughts come in.
You always feel like you got to keep proving yourself, or do you have this feeling now like, okay, not that you've made it, but you've got a spot?
You're renting those jerseys. You don't have a spot on the team.
How did you develop the skills? What did that look like?
Probably at age 12. I would get so mad at myself because I could not juggle to save my life.
Who is more competitive, you or Dansby?
Sometimes he's like, it's not a competition. I'm like, yes, it is.
Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I'm Jeff Francoeur along with Britt and Brad. And guys, we got a great guest today. Before that, we're not going to talk about the Falcons game, all right? We can skip that from this week. We're still first in the division, and that's what matters. Yeah. Right?
We're not looking good, though. We're not we're limping into the playoffs.
We're limping it, yes. We got a bye week, though, so that's good. Georgia, huge win over Tennessee. But let's talk about the $800,000 kick that kid made.
That was the biggest thing of the weekend. That
was awesome. Amazing. I mean, drilled it right down the middle, and I thought it was great. I think they're going to give $200 to him, $200 to the girl that was on, and then $400 to the hurricane relief.
Yeah.
So I thought
this kid was money. I mean,
the whole thing was right down the middle.
I mean, it was right down the middle.
He was a soccer player.
Had ice in his veins.
What I love is that Pat McAfee came back, man. He was sweating so profusely from talking to the kid, but I thought it was great.
How many yards out was it?
33 yards, but he kicked a 40-yarder, no doubt. And, Pat went up to him before and said, you think you can make it? And he said, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he did.
I played soccer my whole life,
they
which I think is a good lead into today's.
Yeah, I think so. We'll bring someone on that we think could make the kick too. But
I think she could probably make it from 40, 50
So
yards.
I'm excited about today's guest. Her husband was his teammate of mine. I got the chance to announce him for many years. Knew her brother-in-law actually first, played with me with the Braves coming up. But I like to call Dansby Swanson's better half, who's joining on today, and an Olympic gold medal champion and a World Cup champion, Mal Pugh Swanson. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
It's tough for me. It's tough to have the Swanson at the end. I know you have to now, but
people were getting used to it. I'm still kind of getting used to it.
How you doing? Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. I'm doing good. Obviously had a very, very long year, but back home, and now the off season begins, which is just super, super chill and relaxing sometimes.
I was going to say, though, if you think about it, you and Dansby, y'all's kind of off season lines up really nice for you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we have the same exact season. Well, my season's a little bit longer. We go from January to November. If you make it all the way. And then obviously Dansby's is spring training starts February to end of October. So it really does line up perfectly.
The seasons line up good too, with you both being in Chicago now.
Yeah,
That's gotta be a big plus.
Yes. Yeah. It was definitely a huge blessing to be able to be in Chicago together.
Man, what a whirlwind for y'all and for you. And so tell us just a little bit right off the bat, kind of what your plan is this off season, and kind of, I would actually say there's going to be tons of not just young women on here, young girls, but what does an off season look for you for training?
Yeah, I think every off season, I mean, every off season's different. I think every season's different. And our season is definitely getting longer and longer. I think the off season is kind of determined on how much you did in that season, and usually it's either an Olympic year or a World Cup year, which those are obviously the hardest years. We play the most games, you're traveling a bunch. So this year, obviously being an Olympic year, I'm gonna probably do a whole lot of nothing this off season.
Good for you. Go to the beach.
I know, I always say that, but and then I start getting like restless, and then I start needing to like work out again, start training, touch a ball and all that stuff. But yeah, I think just kind of enjoy the time we have, because obviously with both of us being in Chicago during the season, we don't really get to see our friends and family in Atlanta that much. So really just being back home and being able to like cherish that time together. So looking forward to that.
Well, that's awesome, Mal. There's so much that we want to cover today, and we really want to kind of go back and hear your story, and we're going to do that. But we kind of want to start with the most recent chapters in the story. You just won Olympic gold. You scored the winning goal in the final game, coming off of a injury season. Did you ever dream? I mean, did you dream as a kid of that happening? And tell us what that felt like.
Yeah, I think obviously as a little kid growing up and playing soccer, you always dream of those like big moments of winning an Olympic gold medal, a World Cup. And I think for me, this Olympics and the gold medal like mean a lot. The World Cup is amazing, and they mean completely different things for me. I think that after the year that I had, for those that don't know, I got injured 3 months before the World Cup last year, and I tore my patellar tendon, and then ended up having like 3 surgeries throughout that year. Had an infection, the whole thing. Like it was really, really tough. And so yeah, just to be able to kind of like keep pushing through that. That's kind of what I had to do. Like I was like, okay, I missed the World Cup. I had to accept that early on, because you pretty much work your whole life for that one thing. It's not like baseball or football or basketball where you have the every year to try to do that. Like these things come every 4 years, and obviously we have our league, and that's growing and everything, but we didn't have that when I was growing up. So like for me growing up, it was always like to try and to win a World Cup, a gold medal. And now I'm like, yeah, we definitely can win an NWSL championship. But yeah, so last year missed out on the World Cup 3 months before, had to just kind of like accept that it happened. And like the reality was I wasn't going to go. Like it sucked and it was really hard, but I knew that like early on, I knew that God's plan, like that was like supposed to happen. And I think when I like accepted that and kind of like shifted my mindset to have that outlook on it, it was actually like a huge blessing for me, to be able to miss it. And then not be able to. I didn't want to, but God was like, let's go this way. So yeah, and then for anyone who's like been injured before, obviously like the injury part, you're coming back, you're like in a bunch of pain, all the stuff. Like it's not fun. But then on top of that, I ended up having an infection in my knee that like I just literally like my body just could not fight, and it like kept fighting. And yeah, I think that, so I'm saying all this because when it actually happened, when we actually won a gold medal at the Olympics, because I was like, the goal is to do that, but I was like, who knows if it's actually going to happen, because 3 months before the World Cup, I wasn't able to do anything. So I was like, I kind of had that mindset of like, if it happens, it happens. I obviously like worked my ass off to like have that happen. And yeah, I think that's why like that gold medal just like means so much, because I think it really is, I would say like it's hard work, perseverance, this and that, and like as a team too, we like really came together. But I think for me personally, it like really represents the faith that I had in God's plan and in God. So yeah, I think that was a very long-winded answer to your question, but had to give a background for everyone who didn't know.
I mean, you wrote a great article. I guess it was a Players Tribune about that. And it was so well written. But you also talked about, I think, because you were left off the 2021 Olympic team. And so not only were you overcoming the injury that you missed the World Cup, you kind of were able to kind of have some satisfaction in coming back full circle from not making the team to being the key player on the team that wins the gold. So what an unbelievable, I mean, what about a testament to you, but also to God's faithfulness into the whole story.
Yeah, I think that 2021, obviously COVID happened, all that. I had a little bit of an injury, and honestly, like, I will be the first one to admit, like, I was not playing good. I just like could not overcome whatever slump or whatever, thing I was in. I just like, and I didn't deserve to be on that team. I think there was other people that deserved to be on that team. And again, like, once I kind of accepted that, there was so much good that came out of that as well.
You know, we talk a lot on here. One of our pillars is grit, and we love talking about raising our kids. I know when y'all have kids at some point, you're going to want grit, right? You're going to want to overcome adversity. You just talked about being left off, the injuries. Where did you get that from growing up? Was that something your parents, your coach you had, or was that something you always kind of felt you had?
I think it definitely is a combination of all three. I think that anyone that reaches a professional level in any aspect, whether it's sports or a different profession, I think you have to have grit. I think that my parents definitely instilled in me, like, at a young age, like, if you want something, like, you have to work for it. It's like simple. That they put it in simple terms. Like, if you want to go to college to play soccer, like, you have to work on it. We're not going to be the ones that give you that. We obviously will support you in that. And they absolutely did. They drove me 4 hours here, like the whole thing, you know? But I was the one that had to put in the work. And then, I think my coaches growing up, both with my club team and national team, you kind of just like, it was just like instilled in us. Like, the things we would do, we just would not stop. And so, I think that that's just kind of always been a part of my journey, and just kind of who I am is you just like, don't stop.
So talk about that a minute then. Growing up in Colorado, what was your childhood like? Like, what other sports did you play? How were your parents with you?
I played soccer, obviously. And then I also played basketball, and I ran track. I played basketball all the way up until I got into high school, and then track, the same thing. And I mean, I was like a super, super active kid. I could not stop. I did all the things. And now looking back at it, I'm like, I mean, Dansby and I talk about it all the time. We're like, the sacrifices our parents had to make for us, like, I'm like so thankful for now, because I simply just like would not be here and in the position that I am today if it weren't for their sacrifices. So I remember, like, my sister also, she played soccer, and my parents would have to, like, okay, my mom's taking me to this tournament this weekend, and my dad's taking me to this tournament this weekend. And that's how it was for like 10 years, you know? And they just like, the sacrifices that they would make is crazy. And I think too, they always were like, it always came out of love, you know? And I think that was like the biggest thing that I saw. Like, it wasn't because they wanted me to be something big or whatever. It was always just out of love, and support that they had. And I think realizing that, allowed me to like become who I am today, you know? I think there's a lot of times where parents can kind of like force things on their children, and my parents, like, they never did that. They were like, if you don't want to play soccer, you don't. Obviously I wanted to play, but they never like forced a sport or anything on us. So yeah, it was always out of like love and support.
Mal, did your folks, we talked to lots of athletes, and there's a difference in forcing and from time to time having to push a little bit as parents. Did your parents ever have to push you, or were you always like, I'm all in?
They didn't have to push me. And so I think that probably, I don't know, maybe helped them a little bit, that like I was just like so motivated myself to do it. But I mean, they had to push me to, like, when I was sick, I'd be like, oh, I'm sick, I can't go to school, but I'll go to practice later, you know?
Yeah.
They're like, no, you're going to school if you want to go to practice. That's classic. But
what kid doesn't try
exactly,
that?
I know.
Try that.
Oh, I tried it way too much, but yeah.
Mallory, at what age did you start thinking of, okay, wow, I think I can play in college? And then at what age did you start thinking, okay, I may have to decide between college and the national team or professional?
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like people always ask, like, if you weren't playing soccer, what else would you be doing? And I like simply just like, there was only one plan, and thankfully it worked out. So
Cross that question off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think from a young age, like, I knew that I wanted to play college soccer, and I knew that I wanted to play on the national team and professionally. Like, I just knew that, and I wasn't going to stop until that happened. And yeah, so from a young age, I would say that. And then I think once so I was a senior in high school, when I got my first senior national team call up, and it was in 2016, and the Olympics were that year too, in Rio. And yeah, I once I got that call up, I was like, oh, maybe I don't need to go to college. And it wasn't that I needed to go, because I wanted to go. I wanted to experience that. I wanted to play for UCLA and do the whole college soccer thing. But I also wanted, and I think I needed at the time, a challenge. I always knew that if in order to grow, like, you need to be challenged in multiple ways. And so yeah, I think I needed to put myself in a position where I could be challenged. And I think after that Rio Olympics, I ended up deferring because I had the U20 World Cup, and then I went to school. People always joke, like, I went to school for 3 months. I think it counts. They don't. But I got my experience. And that's when and I think for me, again, like, it was never pushed. I was being pulled in multiple ways. But I think for me, that was a huge growing point in my life. I mean, I was 18 years old. Yeah, I was 18 years old, and like, a huge pivotal moment in my life that I needed to make for myself. And I needed to go to UCLA to be able to realize that I needed to be challenged in a different way to be able to grow and achieve the things I wanted to achieve. And it definitely was uncomfortable, because I was comfortable at UCLA. and because I had my friends, like the team and everything was so fun. But then,
But you also had to sit in the classroom.
yeah, and then that too. Exactly. No. But yeah, I needed to like realize that. So at 18, I would say I was like, I needed to be challenged in a different way.
I love what you said, because you're 18 years old, right? And you all of a sudden you're on the biggest stage. We talk a lot on here about anxiety for our kids today, the pressures that they face. And so what would be your advice to them? I mean, you obviously were 18 and were able to overcome that at the biggest stage. So what were a couple pieces of advice maybe you could give to the young athletes on here, just whether it's club team, rec team, how to control, the anxiousness while you play?
For sure. I think, I feel like I look at like my national team career a little bit, and early on it was great. And I didn't really like experience that anxiety and this and that while playing. And then 2020, 2021, after the World Cup, kind of like started to like question myself, And I think once you start questioning yourself, that's when all those anxious thoughts come in, the doubt, all this and that starts to come in. And so I think I obviously had to work through that and kind of allow myself. I think you need to you need to feel that, because you need to separate the two. You need to be able to tell yourself that, no, those are lies, those are doubts in your head about this happening, that happening. And once you do that, you can like fully accept who God made you to be. And I mean, I've always said, like, when I'm playing my best is when I'm like playing carefree, like not thinking, overthinking, doubting anything. So once you can like feel the difference in the two, I think helps a lot.
Mal, I want to go back to young ages for a minute, and I guess a couple of questions. Number one, I read where you started at 4, playing soccer. Were you, and don't be modest in this, were you always like the best kid on the team? So that's question number one. And then, was speed, was speed kind of the superpower there? And then how did you develop? How did you develop the skills? What did that look like? I'm just, for the young kids out there, tell us a little bit about all that.
I can see the smirk, which means she's definitely was the best player on the team.
Yeah.
I can go ahead and answer that for you.
I was I will say, I feel like at a young age, the club system in Colorado like sets you up to be successful. I mean, there are so many, there's so many girls that have come out of Colorado that are playing professionally and that have gone to Olympics and World Cups and stuff. So I definitely think that has always been in my back pocket, and I've always been like very fortunate for. But yeah, I think growing up, like, I was blessed. My dad ran track, my mom ran cross country. So like I had athletic genes, and that always helps, sometimes you just can't teach some athletic movements. So yeah, that always was kind of in my back pocket, but I wasn't the most like skillful and technical player early on, in like when I was like 4 to like 10 probably. Like I remember we would actually probably at like age 12 too, we would like have like juggling tests, and I would get so mad at myself because I could not juggle to like save my life, like just could not do it. But I would ask my parents to move their cars out of the garage so I could like go juggle in the garage, and I would just work on it. And then I would also have like soccer balls all around the house. So like I would just like literally, I'm like walking from one place to the other, and I just like pick up a soccer ball and like start dribbling and like kick it off the wall. And like looking back at it, if my kid ever did that, there's like ball marks on the wall, I would like be so mad. But again, my parents were like so supportive in it. But yeah, I'm saying all this because I had to work on a lot. Like I had to work on the things that I wasn't good at. And I mean, I'm still continuing to do that, you know, and it's just at a different kind of level. But yeah, I think that I always tell kids like you always have to, there is always something to improve on. Like there's not a perfect player. And so it's just about identifying that and working on it, but also not losing what you're great at already.
Did you, when you said you played basketball and you ran track up until high school, and of course, you know, specialization is a huge thing today in youth sports at younger and younger ages. So we love that you did that. Did you you know take a complete break from soccer when you were playing basketball, or did you continue to train a little bit?
I always continue to train. I think basketball season in Colorado was like during the winter and kind of into the spring a little bit. So obviously that like when that time came, that was kind of like the priority. And then I would say during that time, I would also do like indoor soccer. So I was doing both at the same time. Again, thank you, mom and dad. But yeah, I think I always say too, I personally think that it's very important for kids to play multiple sports and not just one. I think that obviously I did soccer year round, but I also sprinkled in basketball and track. And I think I learned so much from those sports. And I also had so much fun doing those sports too. And it didn't and then that kept soccer fun as well.
You know, when having Dansby on here, he talked obviously about Coach Corbin a lot and how impactful he was in his career. What's one coach for you that you look back on, and whether, you know, it was a certain way they coached you, pushed you, that, you know, just has made such an impact on your career?
Yeah, I would say my coach, Lauren Donaldson. He, so it's funny. He's known my parents like longer than I've known my parents. Um, he, they obviously like grew up in the same area, or not grew up in the same area. He's Jamaican. And so he coached my sister growing up. He actually was never my actual coach on my club teams, but he was like the director. And with my sister's teams, like I would always like go and sit on their bench, like that annoying younger sister. And then once I like really started like with the youth national team in high school and stuff, he was like, hey, like you need to come train with the boys. So I didn't really play high school soccer. I still wanted to play high school soccer and like be on the team and stuff because it was like fun for me. So like I would always go to like the team dinners and everything. But during their practice, he was like, you have to come train with the boys. And obviously very thankful that he kind of pushed me to train with the boys because it, again, put me in a position to be like challenged. So yeah, I think he's Jamaican. So he's like very, I don't know, he's just hilarious. Like he's the best. And then fast forward to this year, he's actually my coach in Chicago. Yeah, because we were last year, new ownership and everything. And so yeah, they hired him. And I say all that because he, especially after the year I had last year, he knows me best on the field. And he really helped me get back to being able to perform at a high level this year. So just the background there obviously was great.
Mal, you've obviously had a tremendous year. and you've overcome a lot to get to this point. But on the national team, is there always a feeling of uncomfortableness? It's like, do you always feel like you got to keep proving yourself, or do you have this feeling now like, okay, not that you've made it, but you've got a spot? Or is it always something that you either internally have to tell yourself, or you're externally they're telling you, no, you've always got to keep working. You've always got to keep getting better because the competition is getting better to make the team?
Yeah, so the national team, I think what makes the team so special is that you're like renting those jerseys. Like, you don't have a spot on the team. Every single camp, every single training, every single game matters. And I think that's what makes that team so successful, is that it is so competitive. But it's a healthy competitiveness. I think that we all know, like, the reality, and that we're basically renting the jerseys. But yeah, I think that it makes it fun too. That it's so competitive, and every single moment, like, truly, truly matters. And now, even with, like, the league growing and getting more exposure, like, every single moment matters, with being called in to the national team, because it is, like, such an honor.
We had Dr. Mondo on with us a while back, and I know he's worked with both you and Dansby. For you, when did that kind of come about, where you felt like you needed to talk to somebody, do this? I know the stress of what you've been through. How has that helped you develop too?
Yeah, I think that, again, it was during that, like, 2020, 2021, when I was not good at soccer. And I, yeah, kind of was overthinking things, like, all the things were happening. So yeah, I think Dansby introduced me to him, and it completely changed my game, but it also, like, completely changed my life. I think the work with him allowed me to realize that I am much more than just an athlete. And I think early on in my career, that's kind of, like, without knowing, that's, like, how I played. Like, I was like Mal, I wasn't, like, just Mal the soccer player. So I think realizing the work that I did with him, and coming out of that, with the aspect of, like, when I'm whole off the field is when you're going to get, like, the best version of me on the field. And I truly only think that he can, like, do that work. And
He freed you up.
yeah, completely. He's great. Obviously you guys know, but yeah, he helped me, not just in soccer, but, like, just, like, in my life in general. He's amazing.
I know, you talk about the competitive side, right? So having a little fun for a minute, who is more competitive, you or Dansby?
I am, definitely.
100%.
Yeah.
I think he said that too, didn't he?
I think he did say that on our podcast.
There's something wrong with me, because I make everything a competition. Like, sometimes he's like, it's not a competition. I'm like, yes, it is. Simple.
Do you ever kind of, when it gets heated, do you ever kind of say, well, that World Series trophy's cute, but look at what I have over here in my, my cabinet.
Oh
it's
my
a bit
gosh.
nicer.
No, because during that World Series was, like, obviously, like, World Cup was at the time, like, I just won a World Cup, and then I, like, didn't realize how, obviously I knew a World Series is cool, but, like, when you actually do it.
I was going to say, your sister's married to a baseball player too.
I know, but, like, I just, like, I don't know. I've learned a lot about baseball, but when he went through that World Series, and, like, it was just amazing. Like, I was like, that is, like, the coolest thing ever. And he probably says that about the World Cup and Olympics now, but yeah, I think the beauty about all of those things is that there's, like, the story behind it. you know?
Yeah.
It represents so much more than just like winning. It represents just a story that I think is amazing.
So how competitive are the holidays? Because I mean, your sister too obviously played at a high level and married Jace Peterson, who, I mean, you got 4 athletes sitting. Like, do y'all play pickup games?
No, we don't, because
For good reason.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I will say I think I would be probably the most competitive. Like if we're playing like a board game or something, like it's me. Like I'll be the first one to admit it's like a little too much at times, but I can't help it.
So Mal, you mentioned the word fun a couple of times as you've been talking, and sometimes kids and parents lose sight of the fact that sports, I mean, it's become so serious at such young ages today. As you look back, how did you keep it fun? How did your parents keep it fun? And what's your message to kids today about keeping the fun in sports?
Yeah, I always say, people always ask me like, what is like one piece of advice that you would give to kids? I'm like, don't lose the fun. You naturally, as a professional, like naturally you're going to lose the fun sometimes. That's just like the name of the game. Like sometimes it isn't. Like you're traveling, you're waking up early.
It's a job.
It's a job, you know? But I think for me right now, it's always about reminding myself that I've been blessed enough to be able to do this as a job. Like this is fun. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have that they can't do something they want to do as fun. So realizing that it's like such a blessing. And it's obviously brought me I think what's fun about it too is it's brought me so many different relationships, and friendships. And I think having that outlook on it, like that's the best part of it all, is like I still have a group message with my club teammates that I grew up with, you know, like that's what really matters. But I think when you're young, I think it's like you said, it's hard these days because youth sports are, I don't know, like I feel like they're just crazy, you know. I think that
get ready.
Yeah, I
get
know.
ready.
I'm like, I hear all this stuff, and I think it's good sometimes because the talent level is going up. Like kids are just becoming more talented. Every generation is more talented than the past. But I think I'll always go back to kind of like how my parents approached it. It was like they never forced it on me, you know? Like they never forced it, and they always supported it, and it was always supported because of love. And I think that might be hard too for some parents, because you're like, well, I'm trying to support them by like helping them go that way. But I think it's like, really ask yourself if your kid like truly wants to do it and is motivated by it. And again, like it's hard because I was that kid that was nonstop, wanted to do everything. But yeah, I think the best way I could probably say to like keep the fun as a kid is just to like, I think too is having like multiple sports. I think that's important. Is have multiple things.
I know Jeff has some final questions, but you've had such an amazing career at such a young age. You've been to the Olympics, World Cup. You're a great role model. You've got a great testimony. What are you thinking about? Have you thought about what post soccer looks like for you? Because I mean, there's so many opportunities there for you.
Gee, she's 26.
I know,
man.
but
Give her your center off
out the door already.
But she's done so much. At
I'm
26.
sorry. We'll
That's a compliment. I promise you. Like you're such an amazing role model. You have such like. Is there other things you've thought about outside of soccer? I guess maybe I'll rephrase it that
Thank
way.
you. I
You can play
appreciate
soccer
it.
as long as you want to play soccer, but
It's crazy because it is like last camp, I celebrated my 100th cap with my two best friends on the team. they just got their 100th cap too. And like, we started on the team like pretty much the same time. And we're like now the veterans. And so it is crazy that like it goes by so fast. And it's like, it's kind of sad to think about. Like it literally like goes by so quick. So I am 26. I am young. But to your point, like it goes by so quick. And like, so yeah, maybe I should start thinking about, I'm just kidding. I've thought about a couple of things. I mean, I think the main thing is like once both of us are done playing, I think that I tell Dansby this all the time. I'm like, you need to find something immediately because you're gonna drive me nuts if you don't.
It's called golf. I know he's starting to get into it. I tell him.
Honestly, yeah. Maybe I will too. I think probably the biggest thing is like maybe enjoy not having to like travel and like I think for soccer it's like you're on a schedule so much and it's not the schedule that you have. So like really like if I want to go to a different place across the world, like be able to do that kind of stuff, I think is like the first thing. I don't know if I would ever coach. I've thought about it. I don't think I would. I think some people have the calling to do that. I don't think I'm one of those people. But then I would probably say like really try and dabble in like different areas. Like maybe it is a podcast or maybe it's like commentating. I don't know.
I know you and Dansby need to do a podcast together. I'm telling you, that would be.
I know. A lot of people have said that. I know.
You could have some great moments, some fun with it.
It would be fun. It would be a lot of fun.
Finishing up here, two more questions for you. First one would be, I'm sure it's a thrill for you now. You see all these little girls wearing your jersey, walking around. When you were growing up, who was the player you most wanted to be, or who was your favorite athlete growing up?
I had two. Mia Hamm, obviously, think still is the icon. It's so funny. Like right before the Olympics, the 99ers were like we like had lunch with them, and we all still to this day are like in awe about them. Yeah, like it still will be always like, oh my
well, you
gosh.
both married shortstops, so you got more in common than you think.
Yeah, I know. Crazy. And then the other one was Ronaldinho. He's a Brazilian soccer player that and it was crazy. Like growing up, I didn't have the like league to look up to players. So like a lot of my role models, obviously Mia, but then a lot of them were like male athletes. So like to be able to have the league now, again, like more exposure and this and that for girls to just see what they can become is awesome. So
what does it feel like to know that the young girls today are looking at you the way that you looked at Mia?
Yeah, I think it's an honor, honestly. Like I think that being able to just like have that kind of impact in someone's life. I always said like I wanted to be a professional soccer player and then I wanted to be a positive impact in this world at a young age. And so I think to be able to live that part out is like truly such a blessing.
Last question for you, and we'll let you go. I have two daughters, Mal, and they've obviously loved watching you this summer. But I know not just them, there's millions out there. What's your advice to the young kids today, and especially the females, young women playing sports? What's your advice to them as they chase their dream or just enjoy sports in general?
Yeah, I will keep it as I always keep it. And we kind of touched on it earlier, but always have fun. Never lose the fun in it. And if you do, like, it's okay. I think it happens to everyone, but like go back to the basics of like why it made it fun. Just go back and put the simple back in to the game. And then I think too, now, like for little girls, it's amazing that they have like they can go to a professional women's soccer game now. You know, there's 14 teams in the league. I'm like, how many?
Yeah.
But there's so many great players in our league from around the world. And I think getting that exposure early on, and for them to see that is so important, because I think then that can help them just become motivated and them be able to be like, I want to be that one day, and push and get there until one day they are in that position, you know? So I think that, yeah, I would definitely say have fun and then go like see a game, I guess. I know there's no team in Atlanta, but I think the closest one, Orlando. I mean, they have Marta.
Go to Disney and go see a game.
I know.
There you go.
Exactly. There you go.
Well, I know this. We thank you so much. You're every essence of what a pure athlete is, and the adversity, the grit you've done. And of course, you and Dansby do great things and what y'all stand for. So I know on behalf of us, we want to say thank you again.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you guys. It was great.
And I'm finally happy that Vandy football is doing well. So
Me too.
you can be, my mom, I texted Dansby last week. My mom and dad went there, so my dad's like, to Christmas, my dad's telling my mom, I'm taking you to the bowl game. I don't care where we go. We're going to watch Vandy.
Because it may not happen again for a while.
Well, thank you, and enjoy the holidays.
Thank you guys. You too.